It was the fulfillment of millions of individual family dreams, above all the dream of escaping from the dirt and grime of the cities to a healthy life in the country. This house was bought by Mrs. Jennison's family in 1934. Her parents had lived in the working-class area of Bow in East London before the family moved to Bexley.
We didn't live very far from Roman Road, and we got a lot of dust and papers and things down the basement from the market. So when we came here, everything was so fresh and bright. Yes, it was lovely.
So what were the main advantages of moving out here?
Oh, golly gosh. A bathroom, hot water, running hot water. Mum had the kitchenette, which because she hadn't had in Bow, it must have been a delight for her, I think, to be able to cook in such pleasant surroundings, because we only had a scullery in Bow, you see, and everything had to be carted back and forth, but here it was all convenient. Bedroom of my own, my sisters shared a bedroom, where we'd all been three in one room in Bow. It's all very modern in those days, of course. It's regarded as old-fashioned now, but it was very modern when we moved in. Everything was very, very swish.
Bexley had been a market garden village, surrounded by farms and fruit orchards. But at the beginning of the 30s, these farms were broken up and bought by the emerging speculative builders for their estates of semis. During the 30s, 3 million houses were built in England, the majority in the southeast around London. The suburbia of Metroland was born, and the countryside was swallowed up by massive house building. Around Bexley, the number of houses increased from about 7,000 to 25,000, and the population almost tripled. In just 10 years, a country village became a vast sprawl of semi-detached houses, offering the middle classes and the more affluent working classes an improved standard of living. Before the First World War, most people lived in rented houses, but the continuation of wartime rent restriction acts had discouraged building houses for rent. Instead, people invested in building societies, giving them a better return than they would have got from providing rented housing. And the slump caused the cost of building materials to fall. The electrical age had been stimulated by import controls towards the end of the 20s. New industries blossomed and incomes increased in the southeast, and a large number of people were able to improve their lives and increase their status. Of course, the detached house was the ideal, but the only way of building cheaply for the millions and providing better houses than the working-class terrace was to build semis like this. Mrs. Jennison's father was a typical buyer, a skilled metal mechanic earning between £3 and £4 a week. People like him were able to buy because of cheap mortgages and cutthroat competition between builders. The price of his house, £575, meant repayments of about 13 shillings and 9pence per week. The house was treated not so much as architecture, but as a marketable consumer product to meet the demand of the new house buyers. The new semi was a wider and brighter house. The old terraces or rows of the city had an oppressive atmosphere. People wanted to get away from the narrow frontages of their parents' houses, where the long rear addition overshadowed the backyard. So in the new semi, the rear additions disappeared. On the ground floor, there was a spacious, well-lit hallway. To one side of it was the main reception room, and at the rear there was another reception room, which, unlike terrace houses, had French windows giving direct access to the garden. And all houses now had a kitchen, usually overlooking the garden as well. Upstairs there were 2 large bedrooms, a bathroom, and a separate WC, and a small 3rd bedroom over the porch. It was a clever compromise. The almost square shape, which became known as the universal plan, made it very simple to build, and it brought a flood of light into every part of the house. The universal plan was remarkably successful in satisfying both the middle class and the working class ideas of home. This is the sort of house a skilled worker could buy for around £500. The main reception room was the lounge. This was the new name for the front room, which came into common usage during the 30s. The word lounge came from hotels, and the lounge suite, for those who could afford it, was the modern symbol of success. Electricity had made it possible to mass-produce the three-piece suite efficiently. And although the house around it was light and bright, the suite itself, 2 armchairs and a settee, was designed to look massive, as that was associated with comfort and with the permanence and security of the family and of home ownership. The semi was sold on an image of the enjoyment of family life. The emphasis was on the small, self-contained nuclear family, so the lounge was depicted as the place where the man of the house returning home could put his feet up. And the much more widespread use of electricity meant that, at least in the sales brochures, his family could gather round to listen to the wireless.
For Christmas time, the party time, for dinner time or dancing time, the daily times that Big Ben chimes are radio times. Olden days had different ways, their pleasures then were fewer. Modern days will get my praise, our wireless ways are newer. A stirring time, a whirring time, a record time for father time, the daily times that Big Ben chimes are radio times.
The hall has large windows, but there was always electric light, so strictly speaking natural light was unnecessary. The point about the larger windows was that they gave the house a light, airy feel, emphasising space and sunshine and health. The second reception room in the house was the dining room. Unlike the working-class terrace house, there was now space enough for the family to eat in a separate room. But it could also be used for sewing and homework. It was a flexible room. The difference from earlier house designs was that with electricity, there was an instant way of heating the room so that it could be used as and when it was wanted. There was a gleaming brightness in the new mass-produced furniture designs, with plywood and veneers giving a pattern of individuality, although they still had a deliberately heavy appearance of Victorian solidity. The two main selling points of any semi were the kitchen and the bathroom. The kitchen was the woman's workshop, at the heart of the new domestic life. For many women, it was the first time they'd had hot running water, and the first time they'd had a clean and convenient fuel to cook with, gas or electricity. And for some women, it was the first time they'd ever had a kitchen.
She only has to turn the tap to get it on the spot. Happy in the morning, 'cause the water's hot. We can bath an army, the ascot does the lot.
But hot water in the morning was an inadequate compensation for many women, as they were now expected to stay at home and be housewives. Middle-class women now found themselves without servants to do the cooking and the cleaning, so the key phrase for them was labour-saving. This was called a kitchenette, a small compact room displaying the new scientific apparatus which spelt efficiency in housework. A spate of books extolled the new role of women at home. The fashionable idea of scientific management was used to convince women that they should become consumers of the new domestic and household goods. Design was portrayed as the new servant of the housewife. New equipment, new materials, shiny surfaces, easy to clean. Stoves were enamelled and walls were tiled so that germs could be easily wiped away.
Hundreds of thousands of housewives bless the day the Hoover salesman calls. And so will you. The opportunity to add more leisure to your day. The opportunity to purchase a Hoover for as little as 4p a day.
Consumer goods for the home, the new consumerism, led to the springing up of new companies, Creeder, Belling and Hoover. But these goods were expensive and out of reach of most pockets. The inside toilet had now become a standard feature. And the bathroom was tiled, reflecting the obsessive concern with keeping germs at bay. Leisure time was spent tending the back gardens, where a rich and busy variety of semi-private enthusiasms could be indulged in. But the public face of the front garden tended to be very public, indeed a sort of miniature version of the municipal park, with neat hedges and symmetrically arranged beds. Such things were far removed from the countryside and very much of the town. But although the typical semi-house buyer was seen as a person who moved from the town and then commuted to work, factories sprang up in the suburbs, so just as many semis were bought by people who worked locally. This flood of house building was stimulated by American sales ideas. The largest house building firm in the country, New Ideal Homesteads, actually started in the Kentish suburbs, and in 1 month alone it sold 983 houses in Bexley. It was founded by Leo Mayer, who had gone over to the United States to learn his sales techniques. At Albany Park, he turned the station forecourt with its shopping parade and its grand mock Tudor pub into a sort of instant village green. His estates were carefully situated close to railway stations so as to attract commuters travelling on the Southern Railway's smart new electric trains. And where there wasn't a station, he provided the land and money to build one, as he did here at Albany Park. Prospective purchasers were given free rail tickets to come down from London to view the estate's show house. Mayer's techniques were widely copied throughout the industry as volume production cut prices to the bone. One local Bexley builder who, like Mayer, built cheaply on a very large scale was Messrs. J. Stevens. Peter Stevens remembers how the buyers were wooed.
They would be taken by a car and shown where the sites for the proposed houses that were going to be built. These were usually on very large, muddy, open fields, and they would then select their site, make a down payment of £5, which would secure the site for them.
The basic Stevens houses came in two models, one costing £390 and the other costing £450.
Competition was very fierce, and it was mainly a price factor. When you realise that the average profit made on a £450 house was £30, which is under 10%.
It was only possible to build with such low margins in this labour-intensive industry by using mass production techniques. Stevens, like many other builders, owned their own brickworks and quarries. The Stevens estates catered for the lower end of the market. They were built on cheap farmland, and the density of the houses was high. But the three-bedroom semi with the universal plan was just as ubiquitous at the upper end of the market, where the wooded parkland surroundings of old country houses were used to build more select estates at a lower density. Blendon Hall had a landscape park which was sold in 1929 to a local builder. He broke it up so that a more exclusive estate could be built by a variety of different firms. The main selling point of these houses outside was their individuality. The houses were quite small, but builders decked them out with an amazing variety of features, usually culled from very much grander upmarket sources, the country house in particular. Mrs. McAvoy moved to one of these houses with her husband, whose family lived locally.
We had Little Austin 7, and we went all round Sidcup and Bexley, and we were looking for a nice place, a little away from all the houses, because Sidcup was being very built up at the time. So we came down this other road and we faced onto this house, and immediately we saw it, my husband said, "That's it." Perhaps the builder, you see, had this in mind. He wanted to build something a little different, because he only built these 6 houses, and they were just that little bit more expensive than the others. And so to ask his higher price, he had to make them that little bit different. For one thing, the front door, as you probably found, was attractive. We liked it too. This was modern, was a light house, plenty of light, windows, easy to clean, easy to care for, not a lot of unnecessary rooms, and when we came in, of course, the rooms are just that little bit larger, and we always had the intention of having a family. The kitchen was a very important point. A modern kitchen is no problem to keep clean. In the old houses, you generally had to have a woman to come and scrub the floor and scrub out the cupboards and so on.